In the brutal, sun-scorched expanse of the Arizona desert, a U.S. Green Beret team squared off against a unit of UK Royal Marines commandos. Their objective was simple, their challenge immense, and only one squad would escape the full, unbridled fury of the Desert Storm strong. This wasn't just a training exercise. This was a desperate race against time, against nature, and against an elite opponent in the ultimate desert assault challenge. What unfolded over the next grueling hours would test the very soul of special operations philosophy, pitting American ingenuity against British fortitude in a crucible of sand and wind. The bet was monumental, the stakes were reputations, and the prize was a legend whispered in the halls of both the Pentagon and Whitehall. Lieutenant Colonel David Crowe of the U.S. Army Special Forces watched his men, the ODA, finalize their kit with the methodical precision that was their trademark. They were masters of unconventional warfare, of building relationships and fighting alongside indigenous forces. They were teachers, warriors, diplomats with rifles. Across the dusty staging area, Royal Marines Major Alistair Finch observed with the calm, assessing gaze of a man bred on the harsh coasts and frozen tundras of the world. His men, from the Special Boat Service Support Troop, were amphibians of war, equally at home in the freezing water as on land. But today, the land was a merciless oven. The challenge, set by a joint training command seeking to stress-test interoperability, was a complex desert assault on a simulated high-value target compound, deep in the most treacherous part of the range. The catch was the weather. A massive, predicted sandstorm. The briefing called it was closing in fast. The window for assault was collapsing by the minute. The compound had to be seized, intelligence retrieved, and an exfil secured before the storm hit. If caught in the open, the exercise would be a catastrophic failure, with simulated losses total. The two squads, each brilliant in their own right, would run the mission separately, with only the clock and the looming sky as their judges. The storm doesn't care about your pedigree, the overseeing general had said. It will swallow you whole. Your mission is to beat it. And to beat each other. Crowe was confident. His Green Berets had honed their skills in the deserts of the Middle East for 2 decades. Their equipment was cutting-edge GPS with real-time weather overlay, advanced dust filters for their optics and respirators, lightweight, breathable camouflage designed for extreme arid environments. Their plan leveraged technology and speed. A fast vehicle insertion using specialized dune buggies to cover the vast distance, then a tech-aided approach using terrain mapping software to find the most expedient route to the compound. Their assault would be a model of modern warfare, synchronized, networked, precise. They believed in the tools of the 21st century to conquer the ancient, hostile terrain. Major Finch's Royal Marines approached the problem differently. Their kit was robust, some of it looking well used, but every piece was familiar as an old friend. They studied paper maps and analog compasses alongside their GPS units. Their plan was less about blinding speed and more about relentless, sustainable advance. They opted for a mixed insertion, a grueling cross-country trek on foot for the first leg to conserve the fuel, and integrity of their vehicles for the critical exfil, believing the storm would wreak havoc on delicate engines. Their philosophy was one of endurance and adaptability, forged in the South Atlantic winds and the mountains of Afghanistan. They respected technology but trusted their foundational skills above all. Before we march into the heart of this desert showdown, I need to ask you a question. Are you here just for the action, or are you here to understand the real, gritty truth behind how the world's most elite soldiers think and fight? This isn't Hollywood. This is about the philosophies that win wars and save lives. Subscribing right now is how you signal that you're committed to going beyond the surface, to uncovering the tactical truth that most channels gloss over. Will you be part of that audience, or will you fade into the background noise? The choice is yours, and it starts with that subscribe button. The starting signal was given, and the two squads vanished into the shimmering heat haze, their paths diverging immediately. The Green Berets' buggies kicked up colossal plumes of dust, a beacon of their progress across the flatlands. They made incredible time, the powerful engines eating up the miles. Crowe monitored their progress on his tablet, the blue dots racing toward the first waypoint. They were a symphony of modern efficiency. Back at the command observation post, the officers watched the two approaches unfold on the map. The American route was a nearly straight line, a testament to their confidence in overcoming terrain obstacles with speed and power. The British route was more serpentine, following natural contours, avoiding the most exposed ridges, a path chosen for cover and energy conservation. The first signs of trouble for the Americans were subtle. The advanced weather system on Crowe's tablet flickered. Then, the signal began to degrade. Electromagnetic interference from the storm's front edge. "Here comes," Sergeant reported. "Satellite link is getting spotty." The perfect digital map began to pixelate and freeze. Meanwhile, the Royal Marines were navigating a deep wadi, their pace steady, their physical effort immense but controlled. They were drinking water on a strict timetable, their faces covered in Marg's eyes constantly scanning not just for threats, but for changes in the wind, shifts in the sand. They felt the pressure drop first, a subtle but ominous sign. The leading Marine glanced at Finch and simply nodded. The storm was coming faster than predicted. The Green Berets hit their dismount point flawlessly, ahead of schedule. They stashed the buggies and began their foot approach. But the terrain here was different from the intel pictures. Recent minor flash floods had carved new channels, turned sandy patches into loose scree. Their tech-assisted optimal path was now a series of energy-sapping climbs and unstable footing. They adapted, because they are elite, but the adaptation cost them the time they had saved. The British, moving slower from the start, encountered the same terrain changes but simply adjusted their serpentine route. Their analog navigation allowing for instant recalculation without waiting for a satellite to tell them they were off course. As the first real gusts of wind began to whip sand through the air, the assault phases began. The Green Berets initiated their breach. It was a masterpiece of synchronized timing. A suppressed shot took out a simulated sentry. A flashbang from a drone perfectly positioned exploded in the central courtyard. They flowed into the compound, clearing rooms with practiced efficiency. They secured the building, found the target intelligence a hard drive and signaled for exfil. They had done it, but as they regrouped the world turned beige. The Sandstorm, the Strong arrived not as a gradual wall but as a sudden violent onslaught. Visibility dropped to 0 in seconds. The howling wind erased sound, direction, and sanity. Their planned exfil route back to the buggies, a mere 800 meters away, became an impassable gulf of chaos. Their GPS was useless, a spinning kaleidoscope of error. Their comms dissolved into static. They were blind, deaf, and utterly disoriented in a maelstrom of sand. At that exact moment, the Royal Marines were executing their own assault. They had approached under the growing wind, using the noise and dust as cover. Their breach was silent and brutal, no flashbangs, just swift close-quarters engagements. They secured the compound with equal efficiency, retrieved their hard drive and prepared to leave. But they were not caught off guard by the storm's ferocity. They were already operating within it. Finch gave a hand signal. The Marines immediately formed a tight file, each man placing a hand on the shoulder of the man in front. They produced old-fashioned mechanical compasses, shielded from the wind by their bodies. Their route out was not to vehicles left in the open, but to a pre-scouted rock outcrop, a natural windbreak they had identified as their fallback point. They moved not quickly, but with absolute certainty, a chain of determined men walking step by deliberate step into the screaming abyss, guided by a needle pointing north. If the sheer intensity of this clash of titans, this battle of wills against nature and each other, is gripping you, then you cannot be a passive observer. This is where you decide what kind of viewer you are. If this raw, unfiltered look at elite survival and tactical philosophy is impacting you, click subscribe. It's free, it takes a second, and it is the only way to ensure you don't miss the crucial conclusion of this struggle. There is no excuse to not lock in right now. Back in the observation post, the monitors showing live feeds from body cams had all turned to static snow or beige fury. Radio calls went unanswered. The storm had swallowed both teams. The only data was the last known positions from the transponders before they failed. The Americans were stationary, somewhere between the compound and their buggies. The British signal was moving, slowly but discernible, away from the compound toward the northern edge of the valley. An hour of tense silence passed. Then, through the still howling but slightly abating wind, a shape emerged. It was the file of Royal Marines, looking like ghosts from a Lawrence of Arabia nightmare, coated in a uniform layer of fine dust, but moving in good order. They marched straight to the observation post's checkpoint. Major Finch, his face a cracked mask of dirt, presented the hard drive. "Task complete," he stated, his voice hoarse but clear. All personnel accounted for. They had navigated to their fallback, waited out the worst of the storm in the lee of the rocks, and then completed the exfil on foot to the designated rally point. They had escaped the sandstorm strong by integrating with its chaos, not fighting it. Another 30 minutes passed before the Green Berets staggered in. They had eventually hunkered down using a GPS dead reckoning technique once the winds calmed slightly to find their buggies, but the vehicle's engines were clogged with sand. They had to abandon them and hump their gear back on foot, exhausted and defeated by the environment. They had completed the military objectives, but they had not beaten the storm. They had been caught by it, pinned down, and survived. Only one squad had truly escaped. The debrief was a lesson in humility and philosophy. Colonel Crow was gracious in defeat. "We planned for the mission," he admitted. "You planned for the environment to become the mission. Our tech gave us the forecast, but your doctrine gave you the respect. We tried to outrun nature. You worked with its rhythm, even when that rhythm was a scream." Major Finch, ever understated, replied, "The desert, the Arctic, the jungle. They don't adapt to us. We must adapt to them. Sometimes the oldest tool in the pack, a compass, a map. Your own 2-fit's the only one that won't fail when the world turns upside down." The $20,000 bet was paid, not with bitterness, but with the profound respect that only emerges from shared suffering and witnessed excellence. The Green Berets cooked a spectacular American breakfast the next morning for the Royal Marines, who ate it with relish and good humor. The lesson was etched into every participant. Technology is a formidable multiplier, but it is not a substitute for foundational skill, environmental intuition, and the mental fortitude to stay oriented when every sensory input tells you you are lost. The Desert Assault Challenge proved that in a contest against an indifferent and furious nature, the squad that listens to the wind, trusts its basics, and moves with the storm will be the one that walks out the other side. This was a collision of two legendary worlds. Now, I want to hear from your world. Was it the American technological edge or the British rugged endurance that you found more compelling? Leave your verdict in the comments below. If this deep dive into the mindset of elites has you wanting more, click subscribe now, just below the video. To join a community that doesn't shy away from the complex realities of conflict and survival, and to see the ultimate test of human will in another extreme environment, click now on the video that appears on your screen, where we break down an even more unbelievable showdown in the frozen peaks of the Himalayas.